We hope you're ready to take a trip around the world. Well, this will be as close as we can travel for quite a while. We'll be traveling online. We've got some great international panelists here today to describe what it's like living in communities where waste projects are being implemented and where waste is stored today. Our panel chair is logging in from the land of the design icons such as IKEA, Volvo, and ABBA. We're so lucky to have Christina Gillen with us today from Sweden. She's the principal consultant for the nuclear waste decommissioning at the Vysus group. For over 2 decades, Kristina has worked in nuclear waste management and decommissioning, with a specific focus on design and safety of spent fuel storage and encapsulation facilities. She also has a penchant for talking about sustainability in the back end of the nuclear cycle. She's no stranger to Canada, and she's been the chair of the Canadian Standards Association's Technical Committee for Radioactive Waste Management as well. She'll now introduce us to our panelists.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone over in Canada, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists over here in Europe. My name again is Christina Gillen. I work for a company called Vysus Group, and where I work on a variety of projects related to nuclear waste and decommissioning. And I've previously worked in Canada, as heard. So it's my great pleasure to be able to do some bridge building and facilitate here, bringing you international perspectives and experiences into the discussion on low and intermediate level waste management. So with me today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Rebecca Robbins. She is the acting section head of the Waste Technology section at the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. And also a fellow Swede, Jacob Spangenberg, who is the mayor of the municipality of Östhammar, a little bit north of me, and René Probst, who is the mayor of the community of Villigen in Switzerland. So each of them will be given a short presentation, and we will cover a lot of ground because this variety of speaker means we can bring you experience from the highest global international level down to the local municipal perspective. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the floor, or I guess the screen, to Rebecca Robbins of the IAEA, where again, she's the acting section head of the Waste Technology section. So Rebecca, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. My name is Rebecca Robbins. I'm the acting section head within the International Atomic Energy Agency in the Waste Technology section. And it occurred to me as Corinne was giving her introduction that I am a person who's lived in multiple communities that have hosted disposal facilities and other types of nuclear facilities. So I'm thrilled to be part of this panel today and have some discussion around what it means to be a community that does host a facility like this. Next slide, please. Just a bit of background on the IAEA. We're headquartered in Vienna, Austria. We've been in existence for just over 60 years. You probably know us most for all our activities associated with safeguards in places like North Korea and Iran, where we send inspectors worldwide to check that any nuclear material is looked after safely and securely. But we also do many other things in the agency, including things related to the peaceful uses of nuclear technology, both from a health perspective, a safety perspective, and a nuclear energy perspective. And we do that in a number of ways. We have 172 member states, and we collect the good practices and the lessons learned from those member states and disseminate them through guidance documents. We host meetings and workshops. We provide training material online, which is free for anybody to use. We also, at the request of member states, will conduct peer reviews where we will send in a team of experts into a community to look at a facility or a type of activity to give the international perspective. So we have a broad range of tools and activities that we do. Next slide, please. So this is a map of the world, and the reason I wanted to show you this map of the world was to show you that everybody has some amount of radioactive waste. We've got 172 member states, nearly every single one of them has some amount of waste. And this is because nuclear technology is used for many purposes. You're probably all familiar with nuclear power that generates the bulk of the waste. But there are also many other applications such as cancer therapy, industrial uses such as ensuring that pipes are set in the ground straight and bridges are constructed safely. The nuclear techniques are also used for ensuring the safety of crops and foodstuffs. They're used in research, they're used in hospitals. So waste is generated in some amount all the time, and it is an inevitable byproduct of all the good things we get from the use of nuclear technology. We get energy, we get cures for cancer, and so as a society we have to accept that there is an amount of waste, but it is beholden on the people who generate it and the communities that host it that we find a solution that is safely managed throughout its lifetime. And by management, there are many upstream things we do to it. We put it in a smaller volume, we make it into a stable form, but ultimately the end of life for all waste is in placement in the ground with no thought of retrieval. So over the world, there's probably about 38 million meter cubed of waste, which sounds an awful lot of waste, but the good news is that 80% of that waste is already disposed of. It is in the ground, it is gone to all intents and purposes. The remaining amount of waste, the other 20%, is managed very safely in storage facilities, usually in a solid form. And around the world, there are numerous disposal concepts that can be used to dispose of the waste, and I'll talk about those later. But a bit of context about how the agency talks about waste. Well, we recognise 6 classes of waste according to the hazard that they present and the degree of protection they need during their management up until disposal. And not all of these wastes are the same. Some of the waste are very radioactive, and that's, by the name implies, the high level, the HLW category. And this includes the spent fuel coming from power reactors. And this type of waste requires special handling and disposal measures and will be disposed deep underground, thousands of meters underground. But it is tiny in volume. It contains the majority of the radioactivity, but it is a tiny percentage of the volume. So overall, most of the radioactivity associated waste falls into the top 2 categories, high and intermediate level waste. But today I'm going to focus on the lower categories of waste, low level waste and very low level waste. And this is a much bigger volume of waste, but contains much lower levels of radioactivity with much shorter half-lives. And as you can see on the map, most of the waste that exists in the world is in North America and Western Europe, and that's because it comes primarily from power plants. But if you look at the map and compare the green circles to the blue circles, you can see that the green shows the amount in disposal. So in many of these countries that have this amount of waste, the majority is already disposed. And then there are 2 other categories of waste at the very lowest level. Some waste isn't actually even waste. The operators thought it was, but upon looking at it closer, it falls below the limits set by the regulatory body in the country, and that can be released to municipal landfills. And there is a final category called short-lived, very short-lived radioactive waste. And this is waste that has half-lives of days or weeks. It usually comes from medical applications. If you've been given a dose of radioactivity to scan your body, that is short-lived. It only lasts for days. And the management for that is to just put it aside until the half-life has kicked in and there is no radioactivity left, normally a matter of days. Next slide, please. So depending on the class of waste, it is disposed in different ways. So as I said, high-level waste, the very radioactive waste, is disposed very deep down, thousands of meters. That's over on the right-hand side of this chart. On the left-hand side is the bulk of the waste, the very low-level waste and the low-level waste. And there are many operating facilities worldwide that are already disposing of this type of waste. And most of these facilities are at the surface or near the surface, so just a few meters down. And countries that have operating facilities that operate at the surface can be found in Spain and France and Romania. But you don't have to put it at the surface. That is the least requirement. You can put it further down if you wish, and countries like Hungary and Germany are disposing of their low-level waste in deeper ground. For many countries that only have a small amount of waste, then construction of a big landfill is not economical or feasible, and so they are developing a concept called shallow borehole, where they drill a hole in the ground and the waste is placed in specially engineered canisters and then slip down this borehole to be disposed. So that's a simpler solution for those that really don't have much waste. There is also a category, very low level waste, which really does have very low levels of radioactivity, and they can be disposed in facilities that look a lot more like your municipal landfill, where your regular household trash goes to, but they are specially regulated to ensure that all the protections are in place. Having the ability to distinguish between low and very low level waste is a big significance in many countries, because the bulk of the waste falls into the very low category and can be disposed of much easier. This is very important as facilities age and they get knocked down, and their waste needs to be processed. Intermediate level waste is the in-between category. It doesn't need to go as deep as high level, but neither can it be on the surface. So it is an intermediary level depth. And many countries have decided that they will co-locate their spent fuel, their high level waste and their intermediate level waste in the same repository. So quite often intermediate and high level waste go hand in hand in the same repository. Likewise, some countries choose to be overprotective for their low level waste for reasons of convenience, and also dispose of that with their ILW at a deeper level. And that's very similar to what France and Sweden are doing. And just like in our regular lives, in the past, we used resources without much thought for the waste that we were generated. And nowadays, we're all encouraged to conserve resources and minimize the amount of waste that is consigned for disposal. And by doing that, we tend to ask for less packaging that becomes waste, or we use recyclable bags or reusable bags. We put our glass and our paper out for recycle, so that the volume of waste in our daily lives is as small as we can make it. Well, the nuclear industry is absolutely no different, and in fact is one of the pioneers for these practices. And over the years, it really has taken waste minimization very seriously. And as well as being good for the planet, the nuclear industry does this because their disposal facilities are so highly engineered the space within them is considered an asset and is a premium. And so they think very hard before they create waste, because they know there is an associated cost with disposing of it. And in a good example for a country that really turned this paradigm around is the UK, who realized that their low-level waste disposal facility the capacity was going to run out sooner than they needed it to be available. And so they worked really hard looking at how could they avoid generating the waste, how could they do things to the waste to make sure that it didn't go for disposal. And they did some really clever things. They had a lot of metal items, so they sent those contaminated metal items to Sweden, which has a metal melting facility. The metal was melted down. The radioactive component, which is tiny in volume compared to the bulk, was concentrated and sent back to the UK, and then the clean metal could be recycled. And that really did save a huge amount of volume in the facility. Other things that they did was that they incinerate some of their waste to reduce the volume, quite often by more than 90%. And they got so good at it that in the last 10 years or so, they were able to divert 85% of the waste that would have gone to disposal. They were able to recycle, reuse or minimize. It really is a success story about how the nuclear industry is trying to reduce the amount of waste. Those are all the good news about disposal. There are some tricky waste streams that still are awaiting disposal solutions, but they're fairly low in volume and only occur in a few countries. And an example is the graphite that comes from a certain type of reactor, which because of the amount of long-lived radionuclides with very long half-lives, is difficult to find a solution. But the agency is working with multiple countries to try and find a solution for that waste. And last slide. This is just some photographs to prove that there are operating solutions out there, and I tried to find a photo of every different type of facility that we could have. Those that are truly on the surface, like the one in the middle, which is showing the deserty picture, through to the ones that are deep below the ground, just to give some idea of there is a concept available for every type of geology and every type of waste, or the majority of waste that goes to disposal. And finally, last slide, please. So just to sum up, on the right-hand side is the waste hierarchy, which is the Bible in the nuclear industry for making sure that we don't generate more waste than we have to. Avoid, minimize, recycle, and reuse. We do all of those things before we dispose. So I'd like to sum up by saying that at the agency, we're certainly aware of all the benefits that come from the peaceful uses of nuclear technology, and having giving thought to the waste that is produced to make sure it has a life cycle path from the moment it is generated to dispose is key to ensuring the sustainability of the uses of nuclear technologies, but the planet in general. And the agency helps the world to dispose of their waste by giving guidance through our classification scheme, which shows the degree of protection that is needed for each type of waste. There are many good practices out there, and they are continuing to get better every day on how to minimize the volume of waste generated, and solutions for nearly every waste type to disposal exist. In fact, there are over 100 low-level waste repositories operating worldwide. For the spent fuel and the high-level waste, then Finland and Sweden are leading the way in showing us how that can be disposed deep down, and those should be operational within the coming years. And finally, and to tie back to the point of this summit that you are having, high quality stakeholder engagement is key. If the agency has learned one thing over the last 60 years of it being in existence, is that we are nothing without the communities that we work with and who benefit from the uses of nuclear technology, but also have to host the facilities for disposing them afterwards. So we appreciate stakeholder engagement, and we realize it is key to finding a solution. Thank you very much.
Very much for that presentation. It's really good to see that there is so much breadth in terms of the experience, and also that it's depending on the context of the country, you really will come up with different solutions as well. Before I hand over the word to Jacob Spangenberg here in Sweden to give them perspective of the municipality of Östhammar, I thought I would just do a one slide overview of the status of low-level waste and intermediate-level waste management in the Nordic countries. We often hear the Swedish and Finnish examples of the repositories for spent fuel that are planned, or the existing ones for low and intermediate level waste. But I thought there may be some other things, just to give a whole picture, to illustrate also the point that there's no one size that fits all. So Norway, to the west of Sweden, don't have any nuclear power plants, but they do, or have had, a couple of research reactors in operation, and in addition to, of course, radioactive waste from non-nuclear facility applications. So I thought what's interesting to illustrate maybe for the summit is that they actually have a combined storage and disposal facility, which is a little bit unusual. It's not very big because they don't have a whole lot of waste compared to their neighbor, Sweden. But it's a bit of a different facility, and it is in a geological facility, but it's not underground. They go right into with tunnels in a mountain. It's quite a mountainous country. They do need to expand it, but there is it's been around for about 20 years. So combined storage and disposal facility. When it comes to Denmark, also a country that maybe is not mentioned in this context, but they too have had research reactors, 3 of them. And they have more or less been decommissioned, all of them. So they generated not only the waste from operation, but also from decommissioning. And it is currently in storage. Denmark does not have a disposal facility in operation. So similar situation to Canada in that sense. They are planning disposal facility or facilities for their low and intermediate level waste and for spent fuel. Potentially, or if they need to, they don't have that much, but it's relatively far away in their planning. So they are planning to store for quite a while. Finland, again, is often mentioned. They have chosen a concept of shallow geological repositories for their low-level waste and intermediate-level waste. And they are local, so they built one at each of their current main nuclear power plants. And what I mean by shallow is not right beneath the ground, but compared to deep geological repositories, they are in the range of 50 to 100 meters below the surface. So the advantage, of course, with that is you don't have to transport. You have your repository on site. And under construction, as we heard about, Finland is the only country in the world that's actually undergoing construction with their facility for deep geological disposal of used fuel. And then lastly, when it comes to Sweden, we actually have local also disposal facilities, but for the very low level waste, so quite short-lived waste. Similarly, that doesn't leave the nuclear power plant sites. They're not very big, same thing, but they can reduce the amount of waste that needs to go into our existing also a shallow geological repository for low and intermediate level waste in the municipality of Östhammar. And same thing in the range of 50 to 100 meters below, actually below the Baltic Sea. We're also planning, we don't have the license, but we have a site for the spent fuel deep geological repository, also located in the municipality, or to be located in the municipality of Östhammar. And lastly, one facility that maybe is not as well known is SKB, that's responsible for the implementing the solutions for long-term management They are also planning what they call the third repository, a deep geological repository for intermediate level waste. Where this will be located is not yet known, but it's due to be a separate facility. So I will leave it at that and hand over to Jakob Spangenberg, Mayor of the municipality of Östhammar, the existing host of both the mound facility for very low level waste, the SFR facility for disposal of low and intermediate level waste, and the future spent fuel repository. So Jacob, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Kristina. Good morning, everybody. You can take the next slide. Our municipality is a fairly rural and small municipality with 22,000 inhabitants, located on the shores of the Baltic Sea. We have also 3 reactors currently running, and as Kristina presented, we have a repository for low and intermediate waste that was commissioned more than 35 years ago. I wanted just to share with you a few lessons that we have learned during this long process, also of trying to make a final political decision on whether to say yes or no to a high-level waste repository. We took the final decision in the council last October last year, with the overwhelming majority to say yes to the application from the industry, which we by law were obliged to take. We must say yes or no, and to send it into the central government that is going to take the final decision on whether to say yes or no to the industry's application. Next slide, please. I try often to show that the codes or the reasons for the fairly successful local process in Sweden has been the voluntary approach. This is actually a small box that contains the process, so to speak. We are in the process totally on a voluntary basis. We are very knowledgeable. We have been in the process of the high-level waste the high-level waste application process for more than 25 years as well. And we have been very successful locally in trying to build a local capacity to try to understand as lay people as much as possible of the process. The process has been very open and transparent, both from us towards our inhabitants, but also between us and the industry, and between us and the national regulatory body, SSM, which are actually have been working as our experts, so to speak. The financing of our internal project in the municipality has been clear from day one, that all our activities have been financed through the Nuclear Waste Fund, which has been very important for us not to spend any municipal money on our efforts to try to grasp and understand this process. And by law, it has been enacted that the roles are very, very clear. There is no way that the municipality's role in the process can be sort of fiddled around with. We have a stake. We're a clear stakeholder in the process through our legal vote. Next slide. This is our statements that we have been doing, that we have been taking during these last final years. We want to continue to be an active part in the continuation of the process of following and monitoring the construction and the commissioning of also the high-level waste repository. The conditions for permission from the Land and Environmental Court must be very clear, and we want to be a part of proposing these rules. And also a continued openness and transparency in the authorities' decision-making is paramount to a successful local process. Next slide. And trust takes time. It takes a long time to build this trust between the stakeholders. That has been very important for us. The financing I touched upon earlier on, and is also important with participation from the NGOs on all levels that are actually also critical to the process. It's important to have them in the room to discuss with, so to speak. Defined roles, voluntarism, openness and transparency, but also a cooperation that we have had with our sister municipality in this process, Oskarshamn, who has the intermediary storage facility, and also that are preparing to say, they have said yes also to the encapsulation plant in their community. So these are our main lessons learned. It's important to have a local level that is actually on top of the process and understand it. Next slide. Yes, welcome to visit us anytime. Thank you.
Before we move on to hear from Switzerland, I can't resist a question from my point, if I may. So we know in the discussion in Canada, it's often brought up that there's concern and worry about locating a repository for radioactive waste close to water, whether it's near the Great Lakes or the Ottawa River, where there's a planned repository for low and intermediate level waste. So, of course, the facility in Östhammar, SFR, it's not only near water, it's underwater, about 50 meters below the surface. Now, in Sweden, we're part of there's land rise from the previous ice age, so I don't know if it'll always remain underwater, but that, I mean, it's. Have you had any concerns in your community regarding that, whether it's the existing or the one that's planned? Has that been a concern? Yeah.
No, not really. It has been a part also of the licensing. The process that the national authorities have examined, and not really. We have a land rise of 50 centimeters in 100 years. So in a few hundred years, it will definitely be dry there, so to speak. It has not been a local issue at all.
Okay, thank you very much. I couldn't resist. Okay, so next we will travel south to Switzerland and hear from Mayor René Probst from the community of Villigen. Over to you, René.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good morning. For us, it's good afternoon. Yeah, let's talk about the Swiss process. So what Jakob said before that, especially lessons learned, I would like to add something on it, which is special for Switzerland. So we have to talk with Germany, so another country, because the Swiss has decided to place their deep waste depository into Opalinos clay, and the Opalinos clay here in Switzerland is close to the German border. So this is something special. So we have to talk with Germans as well in the regional conferences, which is set up as being the community to talk about the facilities which are above the ground. So the surface buildings and so on and so forth. And Germany has another culture than the Swiss. So we are more in a consensus way, and the Germans are more in a opposite or against or pro version. So this is a cultural thing, and this gives some special, let's say, situations if you come together in the regional conferences. So you have the people against the disposal in the middle, and the other ones somewhere around, and it's hard to talk to each other at the moment. So this is something which came up in additional. For us, the process here in Switzerland is a little bit different than Jakob has explained. So we have a 3-stage project which should go somewhere around 10 years. So stage 1 was to find the right geological possibilities. This is finished now. And now we have 3 potential regions. And I'm sitting in one of these potential regions here. We have already all the nuclear waste stored close by in a surface level, in a so-called Zwielage, and it will be decided by the end of 2022 which regions comes into play by NAGRA. So the idea here is really that we are able to involve everybody, as well as all the people, that they have their say. But the problem will be, at the end of the day, the Swiss population will vote if the place for the nuclear waste disposal is okay-ish for them or not. So we have cantons in Switzerland, and I'm living here in the canton of Aargau, and this is one of the potential regions. You can imagine that Geneva is probably not against it, because it's not in their backyard. So this is one issue. And the other thing is, we got a hard time to engage people on a long term, because this process takes over, as mentioned also by Jacob, the process takes over 10 years. And so, for example, I'm elected for 4 years at the moment, and the new election will start at the end of this year for the next period, which is 4 years. So if I'm not being elected anymore by the people, you're losing my knowledge somehow. So knowledge transfer is an issue, because it's a long-term process. This is one thing. And engagement of the youth is a big, big issue, because the youth people, they are not interested. They don't know where they live in a few years. And the process, we plan to be ready for opening to start with drilling and building the disposal somewhere around 2030 to 2040. So why the heck should I bother now? Because I don't know where I'm being in this time of my life. So this is something what we have learned as well here. So summarizing, it's cultural. We have to deal with cultural issues. We involve every possible NGOs and so on. Everybody everybody has the possibility to have their say, but still it should be somewhere in a let's say in a manner that you can talk to each other, that you can fruitful discussions. So that's why all these discussions are regulated also in terms of who is being part of these discussions. And the idea is really that we have a controlled process by the Federal Government of Energy, which is controlling the process and guiding the process throughout the separate stages. And for us, obviously, the surprise will be by the end of 2022 that one of the 3 pre-selected regions should be then be the possible final region for the disposal. And then I believe the engagement of the local people will start then immediately, if we know where it will become finally placed. So that's it.
So much. If I can ask a question before we open up from audience as well, is myself, I live in a neighboring community of a nuclear power plant. In fact, the one that wasn't selected when the Östhammar community was selected for the spent fuel repository around, I forget now how many years ago, 10 or more years ago. And so I followed closely, of course, and Oskarshamn, the one that wasn't selected among the 2 finalists, they were basically feeling, like they lost. Even the local papers here, they were talking about that, Oskarshamn got the silver medal and so on. So do you, in the Swiss situation with 3 communities, what do you think will be the reaction of those that won't be selected? Will they celebrate, or will they be sad that they were not the winners, so to speak?
So at the moment, we have not talked about financing. So financing is a myth at the moment. So obviously everybody thinks that at the end of the day you pay no taxes and so on and so forth. So these are the dreams of the people. So, but I think generally I don't believe that will be a great celebration, because we are pretty much close to each other. The distance in Switzerland are not that big. So if I'm looking here, that's the three regions are more or less 150 kilometers much from one end to the other end, difference in between. So I don't believe that this is a celebration, but we'll be relaxing a little bit. But anyhow, for us, for example, we will have anyhow the storage of the waste already here on the surface before it goes to the final disposal. So for us, it will not be changing that much. Let's say that.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. We also have a question from someone in the audience for you, René Probst. How do you get people involved? You mentioned that in Germany there were people that are very against or con. How do you involve them and invite them to the discussion people? Or to the discussion table? Any experiences? Any advice for the situation that's in Canada that's quite similar?
Yeah, for us, for me especially, I'm the vice president of the local community here. So for the regional conference, for us, it's definitely to be open and transparent, and to be clear on that the process is open-ended. So we are not against or pro. I'm not against or pro the process. So I'm open, because security first. That's the issue. So in Switzerland we say security first. Everything else doesn't matter first. So that's the first thing that you can do. The other thing is the federal office has invited the Germans and has said to us, the process is guided by them, how many people are involved. And if I look at the figures, for example, we have villages and authorities which are 55% of our region, of our regional conference. Interest groups are 32% of the participants, and the population is 13%. So this is somewhere around 120 people. And if I'm looking at the Germans, there are 13 to 15 people from Germany, which are selected by their community and sent to these discussions. So it's a tricky thing, but anyhow, openness and transparency. I think that's the whole. Let's say 80% of the bill.
It really boils down to mutual respect, right, from both sides.
Yeah,
so we are running out of time for our session. We'll have time for one more question that we've received also from the audience. So do the agreements and controls under the Non-Proliferation Treaty allow signatory countries to export or import waste from others for final disposal? I will just say that in Sweden, as a country that actually imports quite a lot of waste, to treat at the Studsvik site, to melt the metal, like we heard, or incinerate, to burn it, to reduce the volumes. I can only speak for Sweden that we don't allow disposal. So all the waste that's sent here, that are treated and separated, so the clean materials are separated out from the radioactive parts are sent back, including like the filters that capture the exhaust from the incinerator. So I will hand over to whoever feels inclined to speak from IAEA, perhaps. Yeah.
So thank you for that question. It's not so much the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty that prohibits it. The safeguards aspects will follow the waste that is under safeguards wherever it is. It is the national policy of the country in particular. So as Kristina said, in Sweden, they prohibit it. Many countries prohibit the import and the export. Treatment is slightly different. If it's just temporary, many countries allow that. But some people have written into their law, but there is no dictate from an outside body that says import or export isn't possible should a country wish to do it.
Great. Okay, I think we will leave it at that. Thank you very much for listening in, those who are, and to my fellow panelists. Bringing your respective perspectives has been very valuable. So thank you to everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Kristina, for chairing the panel, and thank you to the panelists for sharing their experience on behalf of their countries and their communities.